Okay. So our second motion is to the minutes. They have been circulated to everybody. The motion is that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on May 8th, 2023 be received and approved as presented. Do I have someone to move that? Okay, and that is Helen. Seconded, Kathy. Any discussion on the minutes? One?
So in our regulations, it requires us to post our minutes within 30 days of the meeting occurring. And so some of you might recall that we circulated these previously, but we didn't actually get quorum approving. And so that's why we're actually revisiting it now. My preference is always to have approved minutes posted on our web as opposed to draft minutes. So in future, if we send draft minutes for voting and approval, if you could take care of that, because it is a regulatory requirement for me to post them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So moved and seconded, all in favor? Carried. Now, when does this one come in?
We have the presentation from John.
Okay. So we have a staff presentation, the improvements of the Milliken Tail from John. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, board members, as well as fellow staff members. I've been asked to make this presentation on some of the improvements that we've made at the Mill of Kintail, which is one of 3 sites, as you know, that we actively take part in as far as maintenance. And that would, the other ones being Morris Island Conservation Area or MICA, as well as Purdon Conservation Area. And then I think it's worthy to note that our department also, to a lesser degree, has involvement with the Carp River Conservation Area, the Roy Brown Park, Palmerston and Conato Conservation Area, as well as involved with the operation of the flood control structures throughout the system. This is my first time doing this, so pardon me if I make mistakes. The conservation area, as we said earlier, that we're going to be discussing today is the Mill of Kintail. And I'm sure many of you are aware that it is situated on 154 acres, consisting of field and forest, as well as being bisected by the Indian River. It's the home of R. Tate McKenzie and the Dr. James Naismith Museum. It features a number of historic buildings, 7 kilometers of hiking trails, picnic structure and grounds, and of course, a conference center as well. Doesn't seem to want to move here, Alex. Yeah, that's the one that's supposed to be moving. There we go. Okay, so I think the biggest improvement that's been done this year anyway, so far, has been the reinstalling the Mill of Kintail, the museum roof. This was done in the early 2000s originally with historically accurate cedar shingles. But as you can see, there was a lot of holes throughout the shingles. And I think last year at the last count, we were up to like a dozen leaks. So we decided that we needed to do something about this for the longevity of the museum. And this year, with the approval from the Mississippi Mills Heritage Committee, we selected probably one of the highest quality asphalt shingles available on the market, with a lifespan of approximately 40 years, probably one of the best guarantees, warranties, I should say. And we replaced the not only was the shingles replaced, but underneath is now all plywood. So it's structurally, it's a much better roof, as well as the eaves trough was also in poor shape throughout the whole building. And that was replaced from a 3-inch eaves trough, which was there, to a 5-inch eaves trough as well. The next project that we had worked on back in last summer was a museum lookout, which is directly right beside the museum. And just wanted to point out the part that's underneath the roof section was the original outlook that was built. You can see the condition of the roof that was there. That was cedar shingles that were actually put on at the same time as the museum was done. There's probably more moss on them than there is shingle at that stage. And also the floorboards, as well as the joists, as you can see, were in poor shape, a lot of rotting going on. This section here actually was put on at a later date, and it was actually built with the joists on them were pressure treated, so they were still in good shape, but this section here was just untreated spruce, was in poor shape. So what we've done last year, this shows the new roof that was put on this year in this spring, late spring, as well as the complete rebuilding of the outlook. And you can also see, you should be able to take note of the one of the things that the handrail throughout the whole structure was not up to code. So we've added as well a sort of a metal post, that a metal structure that brings it back up to code. And we replaced all the ballast that will give further protection to the public. So this structure will now be painted within, now that it's aged for approximately a year, will be painted in the next few months. Another thing that we worked on last year was the gatehouse. This is the conference center portion of the gatehouse. You can see where the board and batten has completely rotted at the lower portion of the building. That's because it's exposed to the elements, snow, rain, and whatever. We removed all that part that was rotten, reflashed it with aluminum flashing for protecting the underlay. And then we put in a pressure treated timber that goes right across the back and the side of the building, which should be able to protect it for the future. Recently done this year was a wheelchair accessible door and entrance for the gatehouse. You can't really see the paddle for opening the door automatically, but since this building was used a lot for meetings or whatever, we definitely lacked the accessibility for people with whether they're in a wheelchair or any other disabilities they may have. So this helps us make our way towards a more friendly site for accessibility. And also worth pointing out, in 2021, we redid the gatehouse veranda, the historic part of the building. This was also had to get approval from the Heritage Committee as well. We basically rebuilt everything except the roof portion, and last year we had it all repainted. I put in some of the more of the nature sort of oriented rehabilitations. One was a stream study site. So this was a site that was used at the mill for a number of years by the education department, education program, I should say. And it bordered one of our neighbors' properties. Not only was the children passing onto the property was there to get access to, when they were doing stream studies, as part of the stream study program, but also the general public. There was a liability issue, obviously, passing on to the neighbor's property, as well as an environmental issue. You can see all the compaction. That's Ross, our former operations manager, Sally, as well as I believe that's the owner of the property. So what we propose to do is we replant it, renaturalized it. And luckily last year, we had some plant material left over from the stewardship program, which they donated to us, which was greatly appreciated. And we planted a number of white pine, a lot of riparian type bushes to augment the other trees. And we put up a borderline fence. We hope to, in the future, put up some kind of a signage to as an education purpose to show, the reforestation or the renaturalization of the site. This is also another part of the Mill of Kintail known as the Nature's Orchestra. You can see just a little portion of some of the stop logs. It was done in sort of like a semicircle arrangement. The children use this for years as part of their education program. The general public sat there a lot because it is a very nice spot. Well shaded, as well as you get to sit along the river. But you can all, it's very obvious the compaction that's taken place, a lot of exposed roots. And to the right of this picture was a hill with a lot of erosion taking place. And we replanted that as well with those, with the donation that the stewardship program gave us. And we just checked it as recently as last week, and the growth has been very good with very little mortality. And the last, and that gate is certainly not the most exciting, but it does serve a purpose. We just put this in as a security measure to keep the when we leave the mill at night, we can keep this gate closed, which gives easy access to the museum while allowing the main gate to stay open so that the public can still use the picnic grounds or whatever. And I think it's worth noting that as well as the stewardship program helping us, we have helped them as well as by help establishing a pollinator garden at the Mill of Kintail, obviously to increase pollinator insects. So for this year, the plan is to complete the museum lookout. That is the painting now that the material has weathered for a year. Though this may be rather ambitious, we hope to be able to paint the exterior portion of the museum. That is the windows, doors, and frames. There are stonework repairs going to be done to the museum chimney, as well as the gatehouse walls. These have been approved also by the Mississippi Mills Heritage Committee, and we will be using a heritage-based lime mortar rather than the Portland concrete or Portland mortar that's quite often used, which is a much harder material and it's not historically accurate. As well as the gatehouse window replacement, we're hoping to take care as well, pending the Heritage Committee approval for the proper historically accurate windows that need to be selected. And I believe that's the end of my program.
Okay, is there any questions for John? Seeing none, John, thank you. That was a really good presentation. The slides and stuff were great. And
Thank you,
good
Mr.
information for us to have.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is the Mill of Kintail 50th anniversary report, and Sally is taking that one.
So Scott wasn't able to be with us today. He had a death in the family. So I'll be substituting for him for today. 50 years ago this year, the Mill of Kintail opened as our first conservation area, and it was both the conservation area and the museum. And so we're wanting to celebrate it. So we've set aside August 20th for a festival of sorts, and Scott and a team of folks here, Stephanie, Rachel, Sarah from John's group have been working to put together an event, and it's really starting to take shape, and we should be starting to do full-on publicity very shortly in the next few weeks to publicize So some of the things are antique car show, of course, the kind of rental things that you can get to enhance playground activities, bouncy things. They've organized live music. And we're in the process of trying to get the very same pipe band that opened the conservation area 50 years ago, because that pipe band still exists. It's the Camerons, the Highland Camerons. So they've told us they're available, but they have an approval process like many of us, right? So we're really hoping they can pipe in and start the event. We're trying to also get an Aboriginal, an Indigenous opening to the event. And so that's in the works. And then, of course, some speeches where somebody like a board member and others may like to, just say words of congratulations and welcome and the like. So all that to say, stay tuned. And of course, everybody here is welcome and friends and family. And so once we do start to do promotion of the event, if you could share with friends and family, all and sundry, that would be wonderful, because we really want a great event. We are making it free on the day because otherwise parking could become a problem if you're trying to control parking access. So it's easier for us to just open the gates, let people in, and then we'll have free and easy and safe movement of traffic on the site. So happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes, Beth.
Thanks, Sally. I do have one question. When I was talking to Scott last, he was saying he was shutting the gates at 10 o'clock and not allowing traffic in. And that made it very difficult because the women who have been serving tea on the lawn for over 60 years there, they're elderly, most of them. I'm one of the younger ones. And so there wasn't really an opportunity for them to really engage because they can't come earlier than 10 and stay till 5. Some of them really was thinking about they would have liked to have been able to serve tea on the lawn that day.
So
But it didn't sound like it was feasible, so I don't think they're going to. But I'm just wondering if those gates are going to be closed all that time, it may really limit it for people who have disabilities also.
So I'm thinking anybody involved in organizing will be allowed in before the gates open at 10. So let's take that offline and see what we can make work, because it may be as simple as giving them a access pass and then they can get let through, something like that.
John.
Thanks, Chair. Sally, I seem to recall that this would also be an opportunity to invite officials from the National Capital Commission and use that as a bit of a segue to invite them to consider being more engaged as they were originally. And I know that these types of events do provide useful bridges. And I think I've also suggested to you that one thing with the National Capital Commission is there's nothing that prevents MVCA from inviting itself to make a presentation to its board and noting that there could be a win-win. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Good job, Sally. We'll be looking forward to that event and my speech particularly. All right, the next 4 items are rising from the Finance Administration Advisory Committee meeting. Oh, sorry, I missed the GM update and I asked it to be moved up and here I missed it. Because I felt that Sally was getting the short end of the stick. We were always tired by the time it came to the GM update. So I've asked her to move it up in the agenda. So take it away, Sally.
Okie doke. So the first 3 items are from the engineering group, and we're making good progress on all 3 of the projects. The replacement of the Kashwakamak Dam Class EA, of course, the board approved the award, and since then we've done outreach to groups, and as you can see here, geotechnical investigations are planned to be completed this month. So we've been directed by the province that they do want a cultural heritage evaluation. We weren't sure if that was going to be required, but we'll need to be proceeding with that as well. the key thing is that by this fall, we're going to be hosting an open house. And so what our intent would be is to come back to you, the board, so that you know what we're going out to the public with before we actually go out to the public, so that if there's any guidance you can provide, that would be the time. So you can look for something from us probably coming in, I would say October, and then for us going out to the public later that month into November, December. The Carp River floodplain mapping, kudos to the team. They got it out the door last week for QAQC. So this is part of the process that once we've finished our work and got draft regulatory limits or the model completed, that it goes out for review. And so we're not sure exactly how long that will take, but our intent would obviously be to finalize as soon as we get that information back, and to update as needed and get it out to the public. So what that involves is when you update floodplain mapping, you notify affected parties. Now in an area like the Carp, it's a huge watershed. So we'll be doing, public notices, and we'll be sharing them with you whose water jurisdictions, your wards are affected, so that you can publicize as well. And then people are invited to come out and see how it's changed. Of course, we'll have a web page as well that people can check online. So often they're coming just to talk and ask questions. And so we typically have Matt's group on hand to help people understand and interpret, what does this line on the map mean for them. So that's the Carp. We're going to be going through the same process for the Lower Clyde. In this instance, however, it's not an update. There's a small area that's being updated, but the vast majority has never had floodplain mapping for it. Euro and his team are doing the whole Lower Clyde. So this will be new for a lot of people. I think it'll also be really important for those whose municipalities are affected. We might want to talk about giving a briefing session separately to your staff, maybe even before the open house, just so that they can also help people understand the implications of the new regulatory limits. Dogs on Leash, for those of you who were here previously, you might recall I spoke to you that the insurance company sent an auditor last year or the year before to check out our conservation areas, and they advised that if you have a dog on leash policy, and this applies to all of your municipalities as well, you have to enforce it or be seen to enforce it at periodic basis, because otherwise, if there is an incident and you haven't seen to do your due diligence in enforcing your bylaw, that you're liable. So we will be doing a bit of a campaign this summer. We'll be promoting it on social media. We'll have sandwich boards on the sites notifying people. It'll be mostly done at the Milliken Tail, where we're having the greatest number of complaints. So the three counties have now gotten back to me and said they're all on board for moving forward with the procurement or purchase of the KMP Trail. Interestingly, and I need to do some more work on this with legal counsel, but their proposal is to lease to own. And the reason is because they feel that it's going to take them some time to resolve some of the land ownership issues, getting it from, all our data is in the formal, it's moved from X to land titles, land registry. It's moved from land registry to land titles. So for them to square away all the land titles descriptions and dot I's, cross T's, it's going to take them some time. So they're proposing a lease to own, where upon signing of the contract, they could begin to operate it and take control over it and make improvements. And then as they're able to resolve any land ownership issues, that we can turn over sections of the trail to them. I have to sort out with legal counsel if that's going to work for us. At first blush, it seems reasonable. So I'll be reporting back to you in the fall with more full details on that, and probably a process going forward. I think those are the key things I wanted to highlight to you. One nice, really good news story is item 14, and that is that we were able to access through Conservation Ontario a significant grant to support the purchase of land conservation purposes. And we had partnered with the Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust, RVCA, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and the City of Ottawa and Ducks Unlimited, and Friends of the Carp, I think as well, was the yes. And so MMLT was recently able to purchase a property, and we were able to channel $155,000 from the feds to Conservation Ontario, to us, to them, to help with that procurement. But it all worked out in the end, and literally the money came in a few days before closing. It was, exciting times around here. Well, anybody who's bought property always knows what it's like getting to closing, right? So it was very exciting trying to make that all happen, but it did. And they now are the proud owners of what they're calling Blue Heron. And so it's a lovely property. Okay, so that's it on my GM update. Happy to answer.
Any
Yes,
questions?
I believe it is actually. Yes, it's 100 acres. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for those online, it's adjacent to another property the MMLT owns. And so the consolidated property is upwards of 1,000 acres now. So it's a phenomenal acquisition.
Janet,
Just a question for engineering the Carp River floodplain, does that include the tributaries like Pool Creek?
No, it does not. It's just the main Carp River.
any other questions? Okay, thank you. It's a very long report. You've been very, very busy. So now we can move on to the rising from the Finance Administration Committee. Item number 5, the update of the MVC Policies and Procedures Report. And Sally, you have that.
So in a nutshell, this authority has many, many policies, some of which were put into the admin bylaw and some which are standalone. When I first arrived and over the ensuing years, I wasn't always, quite frankly, aware of what policies previous boards had adopted, and it was an administrative challenge. So several of us took a course about 2 to 3 months ago now on it was Robert's Rules of Orders, but we were talking about bylaws and administrative practice and that sort of thing more generally. And at that meeting, they advised that we should really try to be pure in what we're keeping in the admin bylaw, but have a separate, MVCA policy manual that all these other policies could be kept in. Made total sense. So that was one thing. So over the coming months, we're going to be looking at the admin bylaw and pulling out those things that shouldn't be in admin bylaw. They should really be in these separate sort of policy manual, separate policies on very specific issues approved by the board. Then as part of looking at those board approved policies, we're going to be looking at them from 2 perspectives. Are they still current and the like? And are they something that should come forward to the board? In other words, are they truly a matter of governance, or do they contain things of an operational matter that really should be the purview of management and staff at the authority? And because when we've been reviewing some of the policies over time, they can be tremendously administrative and detailed, like use stamp A and fill out form B and that sort of thing. And those sorts of things evolve over time, and they're not necessarily things that are worthy of bringing to your attention. So over the next few months, our intent is to undertake a review, to first pull out everything and put it into this other manual. And as we're doing that, to take that hard look to see at the policies, if we can simplify them to remove all this sort of administrative operational detail. So as part of that, though, I felt it was important that there be clarity around here at this table on what we're going to be removing and what things just generally should be coming to the board for approval. And so I set out in the report there several screening criteria. And these are basically to help inform me and the management team on matters to be brought forward to here, but then also inform this process of review that we're going to be going through on all those historical policies. So you'll see on page 29 of the agenda, there are 10 criterion that I'm proposing. The first several are right out of our legislation. These are matters that shall come to the board. And so I'm quoting section and verse. You know, obviously, all those matters will absolutely come to the board for approval. But then when you get on to items 6 onwards, it's just to provide absolute clarity around what matters will come forward. The one thing I wanted to clarify, because you know, when you read these things, when you're preparing for meetings like this, and you've had a few weeks distance from it now, that item 8, it reads, formal requests or comments that could be perceived as MVCA taking a public position on the actions or proposals of another level of government. The one clarifying thing I want to add there is that this wouldn't include the day in, day out kind of comments we provide under our authority, under the Conservation Authorities Act on planning applications, under delegated authority and the like. So it will not include bringing forward any correspondence regarding applications that we've been circulated by your municipalities. So with that one clarification, any other sort of correspondence, and we have an example later on in the agenda package, that could be perceived as this organization taking a position on something of public policy by another level of government, we would be bringing forward to you to approve before we issue. So are there any questions on that?
This is the, okay. So we do have a resolution here. Be it resolved that the Finance Administration Committee recommends that the Board of Directors,
Yeah, sorry. It should have been reworded, but carry on.
okay,
The board.
approve the screening criteria contained in this report. 1, 2, direct management to apply the screening criteria to existing board policies and return with updated documents for information. Do you have a date on that? October?
So this would be, we're looking to do it in 3 phases, you know, so we'll do a priority set of ones, maybe the low hanging fruit, the easy ones, bring them forward, and then a next batch. So we're hoping over the next year to have them all done.
Okay. 3, approve consolidation of all board policies that are not related to the administrative bylaws or the employee manual in a board policy manual. 4, approve housekeeping edits to the administrative bylaws set out in attachment 1. Okay. Could I have somebody move that, please? Okay, Kathy moves it. Second. Okay, Andrew, I saw your hand first. So any discussion on that? Yes, Andrew?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Slightly trivial, but just to prove how woke I am. In the attachment, the administrative bylaw, there's a lot of his and hers. Is it appropriate for us to think about replacing that with their, just to make it simpler and more in line with the times?
If the board is fine with that, we can make that part of this amendment, so it doesn't have to return.
Okay. Anything else, Bev?
Just double checking, you are going to do a grammar and spelling check on it.
Yes, that came up at Finance and Admin, and we were advised that there were several typos, et cetera. So we will make those changes as well.
Okay. Well, then I'm ready to put it to a vote. All in favor? Carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Purchasing Policy Amendment Report by Stacy.
Hello. So again, as Sally mentioned, some of our policies are quite out of date, as well as having a, sorry, I'm not sure how to flip it to the slideshow. And to move there. And are quite out of date, as well as having very much a mix of policy and procedure in the current version. The other reason we're looking at updating the purchase policy is that the dollar thresholds and the requirements are often impeding day-to-day operations and slowing things down, and a general updating of the format, and as well our new template for MVCA policies going forward. This is a list of the sections in the current policy, and then what we're doing for updates. I've added a goals section, which just is the high level, what's our mission and criteria when we're looking at purchasing policy. Did some brief updates in the principles and the definitions, removing items that relate to the pieces that were simply processed because they're no longer required. Nothing else as far as the definitions and the principles was changed. Under the purchasing limits and authorizations, the first was removing a section that dealt with that they had to calculate GST, et cetera. Again, that was a process, so simply took that out. On the then there was 3 sections or 4 sections: the responsibility of the authorized buyers, the invoice approval stamp, the use of purchase orders. Those came out because they were simply process related, as well as the removal of the authority for check signing, because that's actually stated in the admin bylaw, so is not part of, shouldn't be part of this policy. The levels, we updated, are proposing to update as 4 levels. There are currently the 4 levels. We're proposing to reduce the bottom threshold from 2,500 down to 1,000. Reason for that is that level doesn't require that we're spot checking, it's within the budget or the approved budget. So that's things that may just come up, but wasn't necessarily part of the budget. So we reduced that level. The second level, again, we changed from 2,500 down to 1,000. It goes up to 10,000. The change here was requiring 3 quotes. We replaced that with the concept that competitive bids are preferred, but as long as you're following the goals of the policy, that limit is still acceptable. In day-to-day operations, having to go get 3 quotes on something less than 10,000 was proving difficult. So that's the reason for that. We're always, the overall policy is to be competitive and fair and be watching our pennies. There was no change on the requirements on the third policy level, simply updating it from a 50,000 cap to 100,000. And on the final category, moving that to being over 100,000 for the requirement of public bids. We changed tenders to bids to be a little more open, because it could be a request for quote, could be a request for proposal, so that we weren't tiring into tenders. And those were the highlights, and everybody has the new policy, and I have the old one if there's specific questions.
Okay, any questions for Stacy? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation. We do have a motion for this one. And the motion is resolved that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve amendment of the purchasing policy as set out in this report. Could I have a mover? Moved by Janet, seconded by Stephen. Any questions? Seeing none. Could we vote on it? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're now going to our item number 7, headquarters sewer and water connections, my life.
So with this year's budget, there was money set aside for the construction of water and sewer line, basically from the walkway over there to this building, and that we would decommission the well and the septic tanks here. The one thing that it does not appear to cover was the charge that we quite frankly owe the town of Carleton Place to bring sewer and water to the property line. So when this building was built back in 2012, the water and sewer line was on Lake Avenue, which is down by the waterfront, roughly, let's say 500 to a kilometer away. It was understood at that time that once the subdivision was in place and water and sewer was brought to the building, that we would connect. The agreement we signed with the town of Carleton Place was fairly prescriptive and, stating how our portion of the cost was to be calculated. And it basically relates to the difference between the value of a serviced lot versus an unserviced lot. When that assessment was done back in 2012, it was estimated at that time to be 286,000. So we went back to the same firm that did the assessment back in 2012, Rivington, and they did a current comparison between a serviced and an unserviced lot here, this one. And interestingly enough, the difference between a serviced and unserviced lot has diminished. It's now 251,500. Our proposal is, and I think that's just generally because of the increase overall in land, and also that now development is just around the corner. So regardless of whether this lot was serviced or not, it has a high value. So this is the way the math has been, calculated based upon Rivington's assessment. And we're proposing that we go back to the town of Carleton Place and, that the board authorize us to make this payment when they're ready to approve our permit to make this water and sewer connection. To do this, we do need to get an increase to the budget. And that increase exceeds the $500,000 threshold at which we start to consider whether or not we want to secure a loan for the work. In that it just helps with our cash flow management when we start to get into projects over $500,000. So what we're looking for today is A, to increase the budget to allow for this payment to Carleton Place. B, that you authorize me to make that payment because it's a not insignificant sum of money, $250,000. And thirdly, that I'm advising we should move forward with a loan if we could secure a loan because we did not allow for this amount in our capital plan. And that you authorize the treasurer and I to go out and secure that loan and then come back to the board to approve it, but that we would go out and seek it for your approval. So that's what I have to report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sally? Stephen?
No, our original budget of 357 is for us to get the connection to the property line. For the property line to here is 357. And that includes decommissioning. We have fire tanks, septic field, well. They may require us to put in another fire hydrant on our property. So that's what that 357 is for. The 251 is to have brought our share of the cost to bring the water and sewer line from Lake Avenue to our property line. That's correct. So the way the agreement with the town of Carleton Place is worded, the expectation is that we would do it within 10 years of moving in, because that's more or less what the timeline was for developing that land. I'd have to go back and look at the exact wording, but the town is expecting us to do this in an expeditious manner. You're not using your mic and I'm just realizing now I
Sorry.
can't hear you.
Things change in life, in everybody's life. Is there a problem with the water and sewer that's here now? Could we not like for 3 years from now or something like that?
So I would say there's nothing urgent, but to say that we're not having problems with our current systems, I can't say that. So for instance, we do have issues with high sodium content in the drinking water, so we have to use a separate supply for that. We do have challenges keeping our fire tanks full. So it's great when the water level's high in the ground, but when the water level's low, we have a hard time keeping them full. And we did have a problem with the septic field. So I think, and I'd have to check back with the operations group, but I think we did a fix to get us through to when the water and sewer are coming, but we didn't invest the kind of money we would have if we were expecting to continue use of that septic field for the next several years.
It's just not a great time to go out and look for a loan.
So our loans we have two options. As a conservation authority, we can either go to a municipality or we can go to Infrastructure Ontario secured by a municipality. To date, we have a loan with the town of Carleton Place and a loan with the city of Ottawa. The loan, the city of Ottawa council approval may allow for this amount. We'd have to go back and check. So they may have, because they gave us approval for something much bigger than we ultimately ended up using. No, I know that. Yes. So, but all that to say is at least we're dealing with friendly parties.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to read the motion. Okay, resolved that the Finance Administration Committee recommends that the board, one, authorize an increase to the 2023 budget, other capital HQ sewer water connection project from 357,500 to 609,000 plus HST to address the cost of bringing municipal services to the property line. Authorize payment of 251,500 to the town of Carleton Place in fulfillment of the 2012 development permit agreement for the extension of municipal services to the MVCA property line. And three, authorize securement of a loan for the HQ sewer and water connection project. And four, authorize the general manager and or treasurer to negotiate financing terms for a loan with Infrastructure Ontario or a member municipality. Could I have someone move that, please? Okay, moved by Glenn, seconded by Janet. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, our next report is item number 8, and it's the reinstatement of the education report, our education program, and Sally is giving the report on this. That's why you need to sit here, right? That's why you need to sit here. I thought I'd like to throw stuff at Stacy.
Okay, again, Scott couldn't be here, so I'm making this presentation on his behalf. So as you may recall, we ended up suspending our education program in 2020 due to COVID. And in that same year, unfortunately, we were also had sustained a 50% cut in provincial funding. And as well, we were looking at wanting to trial our stewardship program on a full-time basis. So up until 2019, 2020, our stewardship program had been part-time, mainly a summer sort of program. So we reallocated the funds from an education program to the stewardship program, which was much more amenable to being delivered during COVID. So our education program historically used to comprise several things. So there was the outdoor education program, which is the program that we delivered to schools. Then the spring water awareness program, and I should elaborate, that's where they would bring their classes to the site and you know, for half a day or a day and get to tour the site, and educational materials we provided, et cetera. The spring water awareness program is where actually we would go to the schools, and that was funded through a grant with OPG. And this is related to making sure kids are safe during the spring freshet and aren't going near waterways, especially ones with dam structures, et cetera. The Ontario Envirothon is something that the Conservation Authority and conservation authorities across Ontario have participated in off and on. What I'm here to talk to you about today is what we refer to as the Wildlife Watchers Day Camp. And then there are other events that would happen off and on, the Children's Water Festival, the Night Sky Astronomy, and other programs or activities that would all happen under what we used to call our education program. So I already mentioned the outdoor education. So this was one where, you know, we were engaging with many school boards across our jurisdiction. It was year round. It met educational curriculum requirements. And, you know, it was a great way, especially for kids in the city who don't have access to natural areas to come out, as well as those in you know, the more rural areas of the municipality to come and learn about the nature and landscape that they engaged with on a regular basis. That program is under review. We are going to be receiving funding from the foundation to help us look at that. So what I'm bringing to you today does not relate to this program. What we are talking about is beginning to reinstate something of an education program through a day camp program. So this would be run for 68 weeks in the summer of next year. We'd be looking to get 20 to 30 campers per week at ages 6 and up. And absolutely it would be, you know, an educational program, but obviously it would want to be fun for the kids. So it is definitely a summer camp. And it would focus on conservation and stewardship. Historically, our program for the full year program that included the full gamut of programs cost in the order of 106 in 2018. So you can say by now it'd probably be costing around 120 per year. So the amount we're looking for today is 20,000, not 120,000. And you can see that salaries and benefits was a significant part of that. That's because we had a full-time education coordinator and then part-time staff during the summer. On the revenue side, you can see that 19% of our revenues were achieved through the day camp. So summer camps are a good source of revenue. And because we wouldn't be sustaining a full-time year-round employee, we feel that we could probably within a short number of years make that program full cost recovery. So, you know, in reinstating this component of the education, you know, we're looking to obviously provide fun summer experience for children and help grow the next generation of environmental stewards. we would obviously as well be targeting, people who could make it to the mill within a 30-minute drive in all likelihood. But that's still a very good catchment area and very much aligns with a lot of the people who use our facility as well. So the goal as well would be to remind people that the Mill of Kintail exists. It's a destination that they should visit and thereby increase just general attendance at the site. You get the families there for a day camp, you get them back there in the fall for a winter, a fall or a winter walk. This would help to improve the revenues that we're getting through either parking passes or day passes at the site. And that those revenues actually support all of the programming at the site, including whatever category 3 programs. So for instance, our play structures and the museum are funded in part through those parking revenues. So by, driving people to the site in the summer for something like a summer camp that can be offered almost revenue neutral, that we can drive and hopefully enhance and continued attendance at the site. So the reminder on why I'm bringing this to you now and not in the fall in the budget is because the agreements that we're signing with all the member municipalities, we are required to notify as part of this process your municipalities if we're looking to change programming within the 5-year contract period. And so we are proposing to make this change in next year, that a $20,000 increase as a category 3 program would allow us to deliver the summer camp program confidently, in that it would cover the key salary of the main coordinator and then all other costs hopefully covered through the revenues of the camper fees. So for us to get this into the agreement, I first need the board's approval that at least conceptually you agree with this. It allows me to engage with your member municipalities in this conversation and put it as part of the bundle of category 3 programs and services that I'm currently negotiating with your CAOs and your councils on. And there's nothing in this that obligates you to approve this in the 2024 budget. You're just basically approving it in principle so that I can get it into the contract discussions with the member municipalities.
Okay, any questions, Steve?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea in principle, but how does it work? Do the kids come and you stay for the whole 8 weeks, or is there like 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, or is it the whole thing?
Historically, the way it's run, it's a day camp and it's 1 week. So
Okay.
you have 2 short weeks along with the, associated with the long weekends. So you get 2 4-day camps and 6 5-day camps
So you come a day a week, you're saying each
every
kid?
day.
Every day, and then the next group start the next week.
And lots of people have signed up in the past for consecutive weeks or more than 1 session a week. And we continue, like Kelly was telling me, that we still get several calls a week from people. Are you running the camp? Am I too late, et cetera? Because we did run it last year. RBCA ran it on our behalf. So it's, basically no cost to the authority. They managed it, but they weren't able to do the same for us this year. So we're not running the camp this year.
What's the charge per kid, per child, or what is it?
So Scott was suggesting $265 a week. But that's, in his business case, based upon his assessment of what other camps are charging in the region, et cetera. But those sorts of details would be worked out if this gets approved.
That seems a lot. I'm surprised we're subsidizing at that price, but
Well, that's where I'm saying, sorry, I'm breaking with good form here. That's why I'm saying the 20,000 allows us to hire the coordinator and know that all other costs are going to be covered. If we get high enrollment, then we wouldn't be running a surplus, right? So it's the 20,000 is needed to give us the confidence to make that initial hire of a university student for a 4-month term to act as the camp coordinator support the hiring and training of the camp counselors for the 8 weeks of program delivery.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Janet?
Yeah, so this came up in the Finance and Admin Committee and I just again wanted to say this is a category 3, which means it doesn't fit within MBCA's mandate. It is, I think, going to be dependent on whether the city of Ottawa decides to fund it. I think that was the main issue, Sally, in terms of this. So just letting the Ottawa councillors know that this will depend on city funding, since city consists of about 90% of the funding. And the only other thing I wanted to say was, and I wanted to make sure that this gets in the minutes, because I haven't seen the MBCF minutes or the Finance and Admin Committee minutes, but on item 5.0, it says that the MBC Foundation has committed $10,000 in 2023 towards development of a curriculum-based materials. That's not what the $10,000 was for. And the $10,000 was for evaluating an education program and hiring somebody or a consultant in education to take a look at it. It was not to develop the materials. And I think it's really important that that correction be made and in the record. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think the nuance there would be, instead of materials, I would think it's more program, that it's some sort of program that's curriculum based. So I think that's the nuance we're looking for. The other thing I would say, and thank you for that correction, is that the Conservation Authorities Act provides for this as part of our mandate, but it's not mandatory. So I would make the distinction between mandate and mandatory.
Okay, with that information, I'm going to read the resolution. Resolved that the Board of Directors approved reinstatement of a nature education program in 2024 at an estimated annual cost of $20,000 as a Category 3 program. Do I have a mover? Okay, Taylor, second. Oh, Jeff. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Allison. I did see you wave your hand, so that's good. Okay, our next item is item 9, and it's contract award for the Carlton Place Dam. And Yuri, I believe you're giving the presentation on that.
Okay, so the dam safety review for Carlton Place was completed earlier this year, and the review identified public safety deficiencies that need to be addressed so that, the provincial requirements for public safety around dams are met. These deficiencies include signage, new protective railing on the south abutment of the structure, new fence around the control structure on the north side of the dam, and a new safety boom. Now, the new safety boom is the big line item here, obviously. The existing safety boom is in very poor condition and needs to be replaced. And it also needs to be relocated. And the relocation will require the construction of new anchors, shoreline anchors, where the boom will be attached. The existing safety boom that we have right now is also a seasonal type of boom, which means that our staff need to seasonally deploy and remove the boom basically twice a year at the beginning and end of each season. And there are some safety concerns associated with this activity, as you can imagine. And these are related to exposing our staff to cold water and fast moving water in the river. Right, so it's not the ideal condition under which our staff is deploying and managing the boom. So in our design, we have been exploring options to design and construct more of a year-round solution boom that can be deployed and basically stay there over the winter time. As per our purchasing requirements, purchasing policies, we requested 3 quotes for the supply and construction of the safety boom. I should also say that MVCA applied for provincial WECI funding earlier this year for this project, and we were successful. So we will be receiving up to $110,000 for this project from the province to help finance this project. So the quotes are provided in my report, and basically our recommendation is that to the board is to award the boom supply to Worthington in the amount of $68,977. And the boom construction to ODS Marine in the amount of $48,795. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Janet.
There's a really significant difference in these bid prices. And do you think the low bid is reasonable? Like, yeah, like realistic?
I know there's quite a range of the quotes that we received, and I think the low quotes are reasonable. What is not reasonable? There is quite some difference in the materials. You know, some of the quotes that we receive are for steel boom, which is very expensive. So this is what drives up the cost. Right. So I would say, you know, like we have some very expensive boom options, quotes for some very expensive boom options that we receive that are more maybe Jenny Glaze, you know, these guys are designing booms for in the Canadian North, right, where there's, you know, significant ice force and whatnot. So yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Andrew?
Yes, similar sort of question. Is there then a difference in the life expectancy or the warranty period for these different booms?
It's similar. It's more about, you know, the loading that is considered in the design, right? Whether it is a lake application, river application, and again, what is the ice loading and the flow and whatnot. And in terms of, you know, the life expectancy for what our recommendation for Worthington will give us 20-25 years at least for this solution.
All right. I'll read the motion. Resolve that the board endorses award of the safety boom supply to Worthington Products, Inc. in the amount of $68,977.98 plus HST, and the construction of the boom to ODS Marine in the amount of $48,795 plus HST. Could I have someone move that, please? Moved by Andrew, seconded by Bev. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving on to item number 10, and this is an interesting item. This is the ministerial exemption request report. Sally will lead us through it.
So as you may recall, our amended legislation requires 70% of all appointees to this board from any given municipality to be elected members of council. And if a council wishes to appoint less than 70% elected officials, they have to apply to the minister for an exemption. The City of Ottawa put in a request for exemption, not only for our CA, but also for RVCA and South Nation. South Nation, I think, got theirs, and I'm not no, all of them, none of them got them. In any event, we didn't get ours for this jurisdiction. And so the City of Ottawa just this past Wednesday appointed at the committee level, Alan Hubley, who is the councillor for, is the proper term Canada South? It is, okay. And so John, upon next Wednesday, when that matter goes to city council, will no longer sit on the board because he sits at the pleasure of City of Ottawa Council, and he very graciously agreed to sit as a board member while the city waited for the decision from the ministry. So unfortunately, this is John's last meeting as a board member. However, he told me several months ago that he would still be very interested in continuing and having a role at the Conservation Authority as a member of the Public Advisory Committee for our Mississippi River Watershed Plan. And so what this report does is it recommends that the board appoint John in that capacity. But what that means is that we are now have a vacancy for the board liaison on that committee. And we put out a request last week with the agenda for people to consider whether or not they might be interested in sitting on in that role. The board liaison acts as co-chair on the Public Advisory Committee and works with me and the public member co-chair on what items should be brought forward. That committee meets, well, it's a rather new committee. We only struck it last September. So, but we envision it will meet 3 times a year, maybe 4 times a year. And the purpose of the committee is really to maintain that ongoing relationship with a cross-section of people in the watershed, in our jurisdiction, that have an interest in the watershed plan and are willing to act as advocates and support its implementation at the ground level and in their communities. So that's the role of the committee, and the board liaison just is to help support that committee in its functioning and also be in a position to report back to the board as a whole on the activities of that committee.
I take it you're looking for somebody to join that committee. We didn't get a response. So, I mean, I can read the motion. If anybody's has an overwhelming desire to jump on that committee right now, your hand up would be really appreciated. Okay. Seeing that, I could probably go ahead and do the first one and save the second one to August. And then in the meantime, we'll be out twisting arms and bribery and all that sort of stuff to get somebody to jump on it. Okay. You good with that?
Yep.
Okay. So resolve that the board of directors appoint John Carew as a member of the Mississippi River Watershed Public Planning Advisory Committee, PAC. Could I have somebody move that? Okay, moved by Jeff, seconded by Helen. All in favor? Okay. Okay, and remember, we're coming for you. And I should say, John, thank you so much for the board. You've been invaluable to being here at this table over the years. You're one of the people that I always appreciate listening to. You always some really good points. So will be missed. Okay, the next one is item 11, and it's the last item, and it's the comment on the proposed public policy statement report and provincial policy statement. Should get that right. And Matt's going to lead us through it.
Okay, thank you. In your package, you have a staff report and a proposed letter that will go to municipal affairs and housing from the chair and the general manager. And that letter was a collaborative approach and with a few staff members providing input into it. So the PPS, it's the provincial policy statement. They're now calling it the provincial planning statement. It's been around since '96, but this is the first time they've changed the name. But I think the board should remember that there's been changes to the PPS before, and as I get into it, they've actually left some of the more relevant sections that the authority's interested in alone. So they released it originally in April, and we were waiting for the natural heritage policies to be updated, and those were released in mid-June. So as you can see in your package, Conservation Ontario is always the lead in these types of reporting. And they've compiled a letter, but some of the other CAs have also, they're also going to submit letters. I think it's important that we reaffirm to the province that some of these policies are solid and have been around for a long time, and then we need to ensure that they, basically the policies are maintained. I think it's also important that people remember that the PPS is what provides direction to your municipal planning documents. So there could be some changes required to your own municipal planning documents and your OPs. I think also just to mention, as I mentioned, natural hazards has basically remained unchanged. The natural hazards section of the PPS is very prohibitive. Our policies at the MVCA are derived from, local interests, local situations like Mississippi Lake, Constance Bay. And we do have a degree of flexibility in our policies, but our direction also comes from the PPS. Natural heritage, I think the planning community among CAs was surprised that there was no changes to this section, but I think we should remember that the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System did have some significant changes with the changes to complexing, where you can actually decomplex a section, and then the municipalities are also now responsible for administration and maintaining some of the changes in the layers. And once a submission is completed, then it's a municipality's responsibility to basically administer that submission. The province has stepped away. So overall, I think this is somewhat positive. There's no change, and I think we need to reaffirm again to the province that not changing those is a good thing. They did do some significant changes to the vision of the policy. It's mostly been rewritten, and they kind of addressed issues related where the 2020 version in regard to natural hazards takes an avoidance approach, while they have replaced avoidance with mitigation. So we did make some comments on that issue. And also sewage, water, and stormwater. There's some wording changes in regard to climate change and minimizing stormwater volumes. And there used to be a section in there about buffers, which is important in maintaining wetlands and green infrastructure. So overall, there are some changes which we've noted, but in regard to natural hazards and natural heritage features, I think the province hasn't really changed those. A little bit of changes to the definitions, but nothing significant in my opinion. One thing we do put at the end of the letter, which I think is important, is that there are a lot of other provincial documents which are very outdated, like the stormwater manual, the natural hazards technical guidelines are really outdated. The natural heritage manual, which is a big thick document that was published by the MNRF, which gives you all the basis on what studies and direction, and basically fills in the holes from the PPS. So those documents are extremely outdated, and I think if I had any recommendation to the provinces to get started on those. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, any questions for Matt on that? No, it's good now. So be resolved that the Board of Directors approves submission of a letter to the Province of Ontario, attachment 1, that contains comments regarding the proposed provincial policy statement in response to ERO number
019-6813. Could I have a mover? Okay, I've got Glenn and I've got Andrew. I really thought you were going to get in there that time, Allison, because I can actually see you on the screen. Okay, any further debate on that? Nope, put it to a vote. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have the three consent items, but there is one that does generate a motion. And that's concerning the Eco-Trek thing. And perhaps if you could give us, Sally, just a 2-minute really briefy as to what we're actually doing here.
So Eco-Trekker is a mobile app that was developed to help guide families, children, educators through the Carp River Conservation Area. It is owned, the app, the code is owned by a company called Fire Labs. Fire Labs did the development work at a very reasonable cost, and it was entirely funded by our foundation. Fire Labs is now basically closing down its operations. It was a very small startup, and the owners have since moved on in their lives. And they are willing to turn ownership of the code and all rights associated with that to MVCA. The reality is that as an organization, to try to maintain an app up to date and make it interesting, it's a gamified app, and keep it current, et cetera, over time takes more effort than we have resources for. At our last foundation meeting, the foundation, as the sole funders of the app, offered to assume ownership and maintenance operation of the app. And so this report to you doesn't recommend transferring ownership right now, only because I haven't had the time to truly think through all the implications of turning over ownership. But I think it's definitely in our interest to turn over, maintenance and operation and use of the app to the foundation and the partners that they may work with for that purpose. I can sort out over time with legal counsel and with the foundation as well, the pros and cons of actually transferring ownership to them as opposed to retaining ownership as the Conservation Authority.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Janet.
I did want to say that the app still works and that anybody who wants to go and take a walk at the Carp River Conservation Area in the wonderful ward of Kathy can actually use this app. You just download it from the App Store, either the Apple Store or the Android Store, and you start walking with your phone on, your smartphone, and it will ping you with information about the Carp River, and then you will get quizzed. It's actually designed for kids or adults who like to be kids. And you get badges and rewards in your little backpack. And it's really a cool app for learning about the Carp River and wetlands and green infrastructure.
Thank you. So I'll read the motion. Resolved that the Board of Directors, A, authorize transfer of ownership of the Eco-Trek educational mobile application from Fire Labs to Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, and D, authorize the GM to execute an agreement with the Mississippi Valley Conservation Foundation for the management and use of the Eco-Tracker educational mobile application. Do I have a mover? Allison's got her hand up. And seconder is Janet. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and the final motion is the most sought after one after every meeting. So be it resolved that the Board of Directors meeting be adjourned. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, could I get a motion for that? Okay, Stephen's motion it and Taylor is seconding it. All those in favor, carry. See you all in September. No, I stole it.
Spanish embassy and see what they say.
Thank you.
Take care, Steve.
So how,
Well, they're all